Broadcasting live from the mountains of Montana, get ready for an hour of pure, unapologetic conservative talk radio. Liberals beware, because this is the Wise Conservative Show.
A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Hello, everybody. I'm Connor Wise. I'm your host of the Wise Conservative Show, and welcome to the next episode 96. We have a lot of people in our nation currently who think it is a good idea to take away what I just read to you, and that, of course, is the Second Amendment. We have a lot of people in this nation who think that it's not necessary, who think that it's illogical, and who think that it's dangerous. Now, I have this entire episode dedicated to the issues with gun control, dedicated to the lies that we've seen after this last mass shooting, and dedicated to the failures that we've seen that people are now not blaming, but instead they're blaming guns for. Folks, just a little bit of background here in case you didn't know, and this just reinforces what all of us have been saying for a very long time. In 2008, the U.S. Supreme Court revisited the gun control issue, and that was with the case of District of Columbia v. Heller. The plaintiff challenged the constitutionality of Washington, D.C.'s handgun ban, and well, in a 5-4 decision, the court decided that the Second Amendment does guarantee every U.S. citizen an individual right to possess firearms, and it struck down that D.C. handgun ban as a violation of that right. And then again, in 2010, in the case McDonald v. City of Chicago, the plaintiff challenged the constitutionality of the Chicago handgun ban, which prohibited handgun possession by almost every single private citizen in the city. In another 5-4 decision, the court, citing the intentions of the framers and ratifiers of the 14th Amendment, held that the Second Amendment applies to the states through the incorporation doctrine. There's already been attempts at bans on our guns in the past, and there has been bans put in place in terms of handguns. And now we see people going after rifles. Folks, our rights are at a point where they can either stay the same, expand, or be dramatically decreased. There's no little bit in that sector there. Right now, we have to fight for our rights to keep our guns. So I'm going to start off with this. There's a couple polls that came out right after the Parkland shooting. So the first one is by CNN. So, of course, it's extremely biased. It's CNN. So it was released just on Sunday, and it showed that 70% of Americans now favor stricter gun laws. And they're saying that this is the highest level of support since 1993. The findings suggest, as CNN put it, quote, that the school shooting in Parkland, Florida has shifted public opinion on gun laws in a way other recent mass shootings have not. Folks, this is another very biased poll, of course. It's CNN. Now, they're saying that a majority of people who live in gun-owning households favor some new restrictions, and that 49% of Republicans are even on board for massive gun control. Separately, another poll happened from USA Today, of course, another very biased network, and it again showed overwhelming support for new gun laws. The poll had Trump at 38% approval and 60% disapproval, so that's showing just where the bias within the poll even lies. And it said 61% say that tightening gun control laws and background checks would prevent more mass shootings in the United States. 63% say semi-automatic weapons should be banned. And 76% say people who have been treated for mental illnesses should be banned from owning guns. So this is the one I want to focus on here. The 63% semi-automatic weapons should be banned. Folks, these are definitely biased numbers. These are lopsided numbers. These are numbers that haven't been in any poll in our history. But these are the polls that the left is now suddenly throwing out everywhere. They're throwing out this CNN poll and this USA Today poll. They're throwing these out there showing proof that America needs to ban semi-automatic weapons, as proof that we need stricter gun control. But why don't we look at some polls that actually have held up without being biased in the past? Let's look at a poll from Gallup Research here. So there's quite a bit that I have for you guys out of this one. So this is a lot of numbers that's going to fly at you guys. But this is all information from 2017. So this is all stuff that they took at the very end, December of 2017. They asked, do you think that there should or should not be a law that would ban the possession of handguns except by police or other authorized persons? 71% said that there should not be. Are you for or against a law which would make it illegal to manufacture, sell, or possess semi-automatic guns known as assault rifles? 49% said they were against, 48% said they are for. If new gun control laws were passed, do you think it would reduce the number of mass shootings in the U.S.? A great deal, a moderate amount, a little, or not at all. 42% of people said that it wouldn't affect it at all. That's the highest by over 20% out of any other section. Which party do you think does a better job of reflecting your views about gun control? The Republican Party is ahead of the Democratic Party 44 to 38%. Suppose more Americans were allowed to carry concealed weapons if they passed criminal background checks and training courses. If more Americans carried concealed weapons, would the U.S. be safer or less safe? 56% said that they would be safer compared to the 41% that would say less safe. And then the last one that I have for you guys. Do you think having a gun in the house makes it a safer place or a more dangerous place? 63% said that it was a safer place, compared to the 30% that said it was more dangerous. Folks, these numbers aren't biased. Gallup has done a great job in the past of wording their questions in the way that isn't biased and wording everything so that it actually gets real results, especially on that last one that I asked you guys, whether homes with guns are safer or more dangerous, in order to keep that unbiased, because sometimes the way you word it does make it biased. They rotated whether safer or dangerous was first in the question. And we got 63% still saying safer. Furthermore, there's a national trend of gun homicides, and this is from Pew Research here. Well, the nation's overall gun death rate has declined 31% since 1993. Now, this number includes homicides, suicides, and also fatal police shootings. Now, what we see is that the decline has been very tremendous within just the past 7 or 8 years. In 2014, there were 174.8 non-fatal violent gun victims per 100,000 people ages 12 and older. Now, that's definitely down from the past in 1993 and in 2000. Despite these trends, Pew Research shows that most U.S. adults think that gun crimes have increased. They say that more than half, 56% of Americans, said that the number of gun crimes had gone up compared with 20 years ago. Another 26% said the number had remained the same, and only 12% said that it had declined. Now, they also asked if it's important to control gun ownership or if it's more important to protect the rights of Americans to own guns. 47% says that it's more important to protect the rights of Americans to own guns than gun control. The July survey that they did also found that Americans strongly support a variety of specific gun control measures. That's including expanded background checks. That's 85% of people support that. 79% of people support banning guns from people who are mentally ill. 70% support a database to track all gun sales, and 57% in this poll support a ban on assault-style weapons. So what we're seeing here is that gun deaths overall are decreasing. Yet, U.S. adults think that they aren't. So why is that, folks? Well, I'll give you a simple answer to that. The media. We've seen constantly, after every single incident with a gun that happens, the media latches onto it and they use it as cannon fodder for their political agenda. They've done this with the past 6 or 7 shootings that have happened constantly. They've been talking about this Parkland shooting for the past 2 weeks. And that's why I'm still here talking about it, talking about gun control, because they've been talking about that constantly. Folks, the media has a lot of power in our nation. Because the majority of people believe what the media says without even questioning it. So when they have some commentator go on saying that, oh yeah, gun deaths is up 30% in this year already. There's already 10,000 deaths in 2018 from guns already, which doesn't seem out of line from something I've heard. People will believe that when they go on CNN, they go on MSNBC, USA Today, when they go on all of these networks and they say that. People believe them. It's not true, and it's nowhere close to reality, but people are going to believe that. And so that's why we have over half of Americans, over half of U.S. adults, thinking that gun crimes have increased, when in fact they've decreased by over 30% in the past 20-some-odd years. That's a great decline, folks. But they're not covering that. What they're covering is the fact that people have died from guns and that it's the guns' fault. It's the NRA's fault. It's the legal, law-abiding citizens who have guns' fault. It's their fault because they're the ones who want to have their rights. They blame the vast majority for something that happens less than it used to. So what we're seeing, folks, and I'm going to take a commercial break pretty soon here. What we're seeing, just to wrap up this segment, is gun deaths are going down. Yet the U.S. population thinks they're going up, and that's leading to more people, still not that many people, supporting gun bans and gun control. Even with that media perception, a lot of people, according to Gallup, the majority of people don't support gun bans. That's not what you're going to hear in the mainstream media, folks. That's not what you're going to hear when you're listening to CNN, when you're listening to MSNBC. All right, I'll be right back, folks. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show. Hey everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive sneak peek of the Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. With universal health care, which is essentially the next step beyond Obamacare, this is where Democrats want to take the country. This is where the left wants us to go. With universal health care, now there's no insurance companies, no one competing whatsoever, and the government controls it all.
Calling all young conservatives. Have you ever wanted to write for an online publication? What about host your own conservative radio program? Now you can, thanks to YouthRevolt.org. Youth Revolt is a conservative media network for young people, the goal of which is to educate our fellow Americans, and also to expose the left-wing indoctrination that goes on in classrooms across the country. Become part of a team that is dedicated to taking the country back, one radio program or opinion column at a time. If you're interested, go to youthrevolt.org and click on Join Us on the top of the page. Fill out our brief questionnaire, and one of our representatives will be in touch with you in no time at all. The time to reclaim our future is now. Be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, and join the movement today. Youth Revolt. Speak without fear. My friends, I'm going to be blunt with you. There are a lot of frauds out there today. People who claim to be conservatives and yet, in one way or another, believe that more government is the solution to our problems. That's not what conservatism is about, and even more than that, that's not what our Constitution is about. I'm Jason Veely, a recent college grad who has the guts to say what needs to be said without pulling any punches. On my radio show, you can expect 100% pure conservatism every single weeknight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Join me as we discuss history, liberty, and conservative philosophy in a style that is just as entertaining as it is educational. Who says we can't have fun tearing down the liberal establishment? Tune in to the Jason Veely program live every weeknight at 7 o'clock on youthrevolt.org. I'll see you out on the battlefield.
America is known for its expansive wilderness for all to explore, and for many, that exploration is an important hobby. This exploration is why The Survivalist was created. On this blog, you will find expansive information on all things wilderness, from what knife you should carry to what backpack gives you the best bang for your buck. This group of 4 writers has created a very diversified and useful site, which I personally recommend. The site has given me much knowledge on a variety of topics, and I urge you to check it out at the-survivalist.weebly.com. Once again, that is the-survivalist.weebly.com.
I was assuming that it meant coverage, but if he says that there's a small group of people who understood what it was, so I'm like, what is it? What is Confetti?
It gets 2 scoops. You know, everyone else around the table gets 1, and no word if there were sprinkles.
He paid $38 million, looks like $38 million in taxes.
Are you tired of listening to the snowflake liberal media report about ice cream scoops and typos instead of real facts? Well, at the Wise Conservative Show, we promise you that we will not report about Kofifi, but instead about the truth. Instead, about the facts about what's going on in our nation. Join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Wise Conservative Show for your dose of unapologetic conservative talk radio. The Wise Conservative Show, only on Youth Revolt. Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. I'm your host, Connor Wise. So this op-ed came out in the Boston Globe. And, well, it kind of goes along with the lines of what we were talking about in the last segment. And so keep those numbers in mind that I talked about before. So this is a little quotation from that op-ed. So it starts off with a quote from Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy. "The time is now for Congress to shed its cowardly cover and do something. Trouble is, it's not clear the something Democrats typically demand would make a real dent in the nation's epidemic of gun violence. Congress can ban assault weapons, but they account for just a tiny sliver of the country's 33,000 annual firearm deaths. And tighter background checks will do nothing to cut down on the 310 million guns already in circulation. In other words, The proposals aren't just difficult to enact in the current political climate, their practical effects would also be quite limited. On occasion, though, leading Democrats will make oblique reference to a more sweeping policy change, seizing a huge number of weapons from law-abiding citizens. At a New Hampshire forum in the fall of 2015, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton spoke approvingly of an Australian gun buyback program that collected more than 650,000 weapons. A buyback that she neglected to mention was compulsory. Ultimately, if gun control advocates really want to staunch the blood, there's no way around it. They'll have to persuade more people of the need to confiscate millions of those firearms, as radical as that idea may now seem. So, have you ever been in a discussion or a debate with a liberal about gun control, and they tell you, nobody's trying to take your guns, you're paranoid, and that's never going to happen? Folks, that's something that liberals like to say quite often, even though they support it. We've seen countless numbers of liberals in our nation support the program in Australia, support the programs in the UK, where they apprehend guns from people. I mean, they force them to turn in their guns. They destroy those guns. Now, I've mentioned Australia and the UK on my show quite often in terms of gun control discussions, especially Australia, because they're a unique situation. Well, see, liberals like to tout them all the time. I mean, for them, Australia is to what we like to say as Chicago for our argument. So they use Australia constantly in their gun control arguments. But what happened in Australia didn't actually solve any issues. What happened is they took every single gun from every citizen. But the violent crime rate in Australia is the same as it was the day before they took those guns. The violent crime rate hasn't gone down like they said it would, and like liberals like to claim it would. A lot of time, the numbers that liberals and the left use in terms of Australia after that point are gun deaths. Well, obviously, if there's not one gun in the nation, there's going to be less gun deaths. They mislead you with statistics to try and prove that it's possible, to try to prove that it's going to solve the issue. But folks, the violent crime rate is just as high. People switch to other forms of weapons. They've switched to knives. They've switched to even just using fake guns like airsoft guns to commit crimes such as robberies. There's a lot more deaths from knives than there was before the ban. But they don't like to tell you that because that completely destroys their argument that Australia did this successfully and so can we. Folks, look at every single large city that has massive gun control movements and laws in place. All of them have very high crime rates. There's a reason why 60-some% of people in the Gallup poll said that they believe their house would be safer with a gun in it. Because it's true. There's no reason to limit the protection of U.S. citizens who have been following the law. By definition, criminals don't follow the law, and that's something that Democrats and liberals can't seem to understand on this issue. Heroin is still illegal. Cocaine is still illegal. Yet there's thousands of people in our nation who are doing it currently, that are still getting their hands on it. Governmental laws are not going to stop criminals. And this is something that they can't seem to understand, they can't seem to wrap their mind around. They think that if we ban guns from law-abiding U.S. citizens, that criminals will suddenly think, oh, well, no other person in the U.S. has a gun. Maybe I should just lay mine down. Maybe I shouldn't do anything with the gun now. That's what they think is going to happen. There's a famous quote from Senator Dianne Feinstein saying that when a bad guy with a gun walks into a room and realizes that no one else has a gun, he will lay down his gun out of humanity. She is actually delusional. The policies that Democrats want to put into place is not going to lead to a safer nation. It's not going to lead to us being safer from these mass shootings, from these school shootings. It's going to lead to us being more dangerous, to being less safe, because no one's going to be able to protect their families, to be able to protect their own loved ones. So liberals always argue, they say, oh, but police have guns, it's fine. They'll be able to stop anything. But as we saw with this shooting at the school, that didn't work. Because we now know that there were 3 or 4 deputies from that sheriff's department who didn't go into the high school. Instead, they hid when they responded to the call. They hid instead of going in and saving lives. It came out, first off, that just the deputy that was an armed guard at the school didn't go in. And he since has resigned. But then it was reported that at least 3 more deputies waited outside. Folks, there were so many times when our government and when the local police could have solved this issue. But they didn't. The police didn't stop him before he killed 17 people. The police didn't stop him because they were outside cowering. They were outside stopping and hiding behind their cars instead of actually going inside and helping out these children. See, that's what the liberals want to be the only source of protection. They want that to be a model of success. But that's not success. And I see people defending them for not going in, especially one of the students that has been very active after the shooting, David Hogg. I guarantee you've seen him on the news because he's on every network and he's using his 15 minutes of fame to express his delusional viewpoints. Well, he's defending the sheriffs for not going in, saying, quote, "Who wants to go down the barrel of an AR-15 even with a Glock?" He said that it's important to remember the police officers are people too, and that, well, he's not able to go, they don't have to go down the barrel of an AR-15. He continued with, quote, "And I know that's what these police officers are supposed to do, but they're people too. They need to worry about themselves as well as all the other students. And I don't think teachers need to have that responsibility either." And that brings up an important issue that has been discussed quite frequently lately. What are we supposed to do to solve this? What are we supposed to do to keep this from happening? Well, if you follow the mindset of David Hogg and the rest of the teenagers from this high school that are trying to start a movement, then no one needs a gun, and even police officers don't need to respond, but that's going to solve it. If we ban assault rifles, which is a whole nother discussion, if we ban assault rifles and only let these police officers who don't need to go into schools in their mind to protect people, if we only allow them to have guns, then everyone's going to be saved. That's their viewpoint, and it's so hypocritical, and it's so out of touch with reality, folks. Folks, these kids trying to start a movement, this is all actually the media just pushing an agenda, using these kids to push an agenda. Putting them on talk shows, putting them on every single news channel. Look, I don't want to seem like I'm being insensitive towards someone who just went through a tragedy, but just because you experience this doesn't mean you're an expert on every single political issue. These kids had probably never even heard of half the things that they're talking about 2 weeks ago. And now they think that they should be legislating it. They're not looking at polls, they're not looking at statistics, they're not looking at the fact that they're just not being realistic. And the majority of people in the millennial generation aren't. And even the generation after, which these high schoolers are a part of. They're not looking at the truth, they're not looking at the statistics, they're just looking at emotions. Because that's what the Democratic Party does. That's what the media does. They don't look at the fact that gun crime, gun deaths, has decreased 31% over the past 20 years. That's amazing, folks. No, instead they look at the fact that they think that no one should have to face a gun, so we should just get rid of all of them. They're hypocritical, they're illogical, they're unrealistic, and they don't understand what's actually going on. We see people saying that these are the next voices of the gun control movement, that they're going to lead gun control into legislation, that they're going to save our nation by doing this. Folks, that's not what they're doing. They're following a script that the media is telling them to do. I mean, if you actually looked at what happened after the town hall meeting that CNN hosted with Marco Rubio and then the survivors of the shooting, there was one kid who submitted a question, and because it was too pro-gun, CNN declined it, according to him and his family. But now CNN's calling them liars because they're going against them. This is just like when CNN actively sought out the kid who posted a anti-CNN meme and threatened him and coerced him into taking it down, which is last year or the year before. It was a big issue. I talked about it on this show. CNN is a massive corporation that likes to control everything that's happening in our nation. They like to push their narrative into everyone else's lives. They like to push the narrative that we don't need rifles. They need to push the narrative that any semi-automatic weapon is a danger to our society. But folks, we know that the government failed on multiple counts here. We know that 45 calls came to the Broward County Sheriff's Department, and that they visited the shooter's home 22 times, which they didn't even disclose originally. We know that the FBI was tipped off multiple times about this kid. We know that this kid himself called 911, saying that he was thinking about doing things like this, and that he threatened to shoot up the school multiple times. Yet, these people are saying that we need to have the government be the only ones protecting our loved ones. The same government who ignored 45 calls. The same government who ignored multiple tip-offs to the FBI. The same government who disregarded the kid when he called 911 himself and said he was going to do something. That's the government that they want you to trust here. That's the government that they want to be the only ones responsible for your safety. And this isn't the first time that this sort of thing has happened. I mean, look at the Las Vegas shooting and the San Bernardino shooting. All of these terror attacks and shootings, the FBI has at least gotten 3 or 4 tip-offs about the people who did it. In some cases, they even talked to the people, and then nothing happened. These shootings are not a failure of law-abiding gun owners. These shootings are a failure of our FBI, of our local sheriff departments. Because when they get these tip-offs, when they get these calls, they're not actually doing anything. No, Broward County Sheriff's Department, they're busy having a Lamborghini police car and racing that around instead of actually protecting their citizens. Instead of protecting kids in a high school, they're cowering and not going in, not doing their job. Instead of doing their job, the FBI is ignoring all of these calls, all of these tip-offs, all of these threats. But we're supposed to trust them. We're supposed to give them the only protection that we have. It's illogical, just like everything that has come up after the shooting that the left is proposing. Furthermore, these are the same police officers that the left just 3 or 4 months ago was claiming shouldn't have any power because they're racist and sexist. It's the same people. The left is being hypocritical, they're being illogical and unrealistic. I'm going to keep saying that because it's super true here in this situation. There's never been a bigger situation in which they've been more hypocritical. And it's showing time after time in these discussions. There's no reason why we should be banning any guns. Why the law-abiding citizens should be blamed for something that the government messed up on. For something that the government could have solved easily. That the sheriff's department had almost 50 times to solve. Law-abiding gun owners shouldn't be penalized for that. Because the majority of gun owners do follow the law. The majority of gun owners do actually take into account what needs to be done, do actually protect themselves. The majority of gun owners aren't crazy, and the majority of gun owners aren't going to shoot at innocent civilians. But that's not what CNN would tell you, and that's not what MSNBC would tell you, and that's not what the Broward County Sheriff's Department would tell you. Because they're all extremely biased. I'm going to take one last quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. This is The Wise Conservative Show. Hey everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive sneak peek of The Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. What it means to be a conservative is very simple. It means that you want to protect freedoms and liberties. You want to protect the Constitution and limit the government. It's a very simple definition. It's a very simple cause to follow. And this is what a lot of people do kind of value conservatism as.
Ever wanted to learn the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in less than 10 minutes? Are you looking for the truth about the so-called gender wage gap? Well, my friends, I'll let you in on a little secret. Prager University is a source that I use all the time when preparing for my show, The Jason Veely Program. Dennis Prager and his team have put together a remarkable organization that seeks to explain and spread Americanism through the power of the internet. Their short yet extremely informative videos reach more than 100 million people per year, and they want to reach you as well. Go on YouTube and type in Prager University, or go to prageru.com for all of their latest content. That's Prager, the letter U.com. prageru.com.
Hey everybody, Connor Wise here with an exclusive sneak peek of The Wise Conservative Show. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. With universal health care, which is essentially the next step beyond Obamacare, this is where Democrats want to take the country. This is where the left wants us to go. With universal health care, now there's no insurance companies, no one competing whatsoever, and the government controls it all. Have you ever wanted to stand up to your liberal professor? Have you ever wanted to help expand the conservative movement? Well, it sounds like you would be a perfect fit for Youth Revolt. Youth Revolt is a team of dedicated young conservatives fighting liberal indoctrination within our school system. If you're interested in being a part of this team by being a columnist or even hosting your own radio show, go ahead and click the Join Now tab at the top of youthrevolt.org. You'll be asked to answer a few questions, and a Youth Revolt team member will respond to you quickly. Be a part of something bigger than you. Be a part of Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Get out of here, you idiot. Sorry about that, folks. Jason Veely here, host of the Jason Veely program. I'm a 22-year-old conservative who is fired up and ticked off at the direction the progressive left have taken this country. Join me every weeknight at 7 o'clock as we promote liberty, advance conservative principle, and work to restore the Constitution of the United States. I can get loud and I can get passionate. How can we afford not to when so much is on the line? Tune in to the Jason Veely program, live every weeknight at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on youthrevolt.org. I'll see you out on the battlefield.
I was assuming that it meant coverage, but if he says that there's a small group of people who understood what it was, so I'm like, what is it? What is confetti?
It gets 2 scoops. You know, everyone around the table gets 1, and no word if there were sprinkles.
He paid $38 million, looks like $38 million in taxes.
Are you tired of listening to the snowflake liberal media report about ice cream scoops and typos instead of real facts? Well, at the Wise Conservative Show, we promise you that we will not report about Kofifi, but instead about the truth. Instead, about the facts about what's going on in our nation. Join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Wise Conservative Show for your dose of unapologetic conservative talk radio. The Wise Conservative Show, only on Youth Revolt. Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. Once again, I am your host, Connor Wise, and thanks for tuning in for this last segment of the show. So sticking along the same topics because, folks, this is a big issue. Well, now it's actually coming out that not only did Dick's Sporting Goods raise their purchase age to 21 and stop selling what they called assault weapons, assault-style rifles. So is now Walmart, and it just said that today. Now it won't sell guns or ammunition to customers who are under 21 years of age. Of course, this is because retailers and gun manufacturers are facing calls from all of the gun control advocates to impose new limits. Dick says that it would end the sales of assault-style rifles in its stores and stop selling all guns to customers under 21. And of course, federal law right now states that anyone under 18 can't buy a rifle, but handguns, the age is 21. Now, this isn't the first time the Walmart has done something like this. In 2015, Walmart previously stopped offering modern sporting rifles, including the AR-15. And they already don't sell handguns anywhere except for Alaska. Now, the company said it has a process to ensure that its policies are applied to its e-commerce marketplace as well, where third parties can sell their products. And Walmart is even going a step farther. They're removing any items that resemble the AR-15 style rifle, including non-lethal airsoft guns and toys. They released a statement saying, quote, "We take seriously our obligation to be a responsible seller of firearms and go beyond federal law by requiring customers to pass a background check before purchasing any firearm. Our heritage as a company has always been in serving sportsmen and hunters, and we will continue to do so in a responsible way." Now, Walmart already doesn't offer bump stocks or high-capacity magazines, and Dick's Sporting Goods hasn't offered bump stocks ever. It will also stop selling high-capacity magazines now. So, what's going on here is it's their choice. They're private companies, and they have the right to change their policies regarding what they sell. But that doesn't mean that people have to agree with it, and it doesn't mean that people have to like it. I've seen on Twitter a lot of people are using the hashtag, and I'm sure it's also with Walmart now too, but using the hashtag boycott Dick's Sporting Goods. And people are doing it. A lot of people are boycotting the company because they did this. Now, boycotting, of course, is something that has been quite popular after this last shooting, with gun control advocates boycotting companies like FedEx and Delta because they had special prices for people who are NRA members. But after they boycotted FedEx, it was great because the stocks of FedEx actually rose. But what we're seeing here is something quite different. This isn't people attacking these companies because they're giving discounts to people who are in an organization. This is a company completely deciding what they think gun laws should be. Raising the purchase age to 21 because that's what the kids who go on every show are saying it should be. Not selling, as in their words, assault-style rifles anymore. So really what they're doing is they're not selling any semi-automatic weapons anymore. Or they're not selling the guns that they think look scary because that would make it an assault rifle in today's society. Folks, they have the right, but I don't agree with it, and I don't think they should be doing this. I think companies like this need to stay out of politics because all it's going to do is alienate at least half of the nation. And that's exactly what they did. And I guarantee their stocks are going to hurt because of this. But I did want to touch on the NRA before our episode ends here. I wanted to talk about how the left continues to attack the NRA for what they say killing our kids. They're saying that the NRA is responsible for the deaths of the kids at the Parkland shooting. And for some reason, I don't understand this. They're yelling at the NRA for getting funds and saying that we need to stop Congress from funding the NRA. But folks, that doesn't happen. And this is another time when the left and their arguments is extremely uneducated and not based on reality. The NRA gets zero government funds. They're saying that we need to defund it, but the only funds the NRA gets is from law-abiding citizens who want their gun rights protected. That's the only funds that they get. They're angry because the NRA lobbies for certain gun measures. Yet they're not angry when Planned Parenthood gets millions of dollars in funds to kill babies. It's hypocritical, folks. If they really want to protect our children, then they would be outraged by that as well. They wouldn't be outraged by the NRA, which is just protecting our gun rights, protecting the Second Amendment, which I read to you at the very beginning of this episode. A right which is guaranteed to us by our Creator. Guaranteed to us not by a piece of paper, not by our government, but by our Creator, something that no one can take away. It shouldn't be infringed by anyone, especially teenagers who are just living in the limelight right now. In my personal view, I don't believe we should raise the purchase age to 21 like our president believes. And I've disagreed with him on a lot of issues when it comes to guns because he is a bit more liberal when it comes to that. I mean, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's against background checks for purchasing a gun. But the left always says we are. What I think we need to do is actually have some way to protect our high schools. Either armed teachers, which they do in Israel and it works perfectly, or have armed security that actually will do their job. One of those two. That's the only way we're going to protect our schools. In Israel, every single teacher has a rifle. And there's no mass shootings in their schools. Folks, back in the day when guns were allowed, like in the trucks, and gun racks and trucks of students' cars and teachers' cars, there were no mass shootings at high schools and at schools in general. Because you know what would happen when there was a threat? They'd go out to their trucks, students and teachers, they'd grab their rifles and they'd stand guard protecting other students. Shooters wouldn't show up because they knew that if they did, they'd be killed. It's simple logic. The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Someone who actually will stand up to them, not the cowards at Broward County Sheriff's Department who won't go in to kill the shooter. Gun control is not going to protect us, folks. Gun control is not going to work at all. All it's going to do is lead to more deaths, more crimes, and criminals being the only ones with firearms. It's going to be counteractive to what the left thinks it's going to do, and we can't let it happen. That's all for today's episode of The Wise Conservative Show. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in. My name is Connor Wise. Find me on youthrevolt.org. You can find The Wise Conservative Show on Facebook now. Find me on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Spreaker.com, and many more platforms. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in once again, and as always, God bless.